The digital clock on the wall read 0347 hours. The Tactical Operations Center at Forward Operating Base Wolverine hummed with the low buzz of encrypted radios and the soft glow of tactical displays. 42 military personnel worked at their stations, their faces illuminated by screens showing drone feeds, satellite imagery, and real-time battlefield data. The air smelled of coffee, sweat, and the faint metallic tang of equipment running at full capacity. Colonel Hector Brennan stood at the center command table, his jaw tight as he stared at the digital map of Kandahar province. His hand came down hard on the reinforced surface, and every screen in the room flickered from the impact. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. His voice carried the weight of 30 years in uniform. You want me to send 8 air assets into a narrow valley with 5 layers of anti-aircraft fire? That's not a rescue operation. That's suicide with extra steps. In the corner of the room, barely visible behind a cluster of taller officers, Captain Iris Lockwood stood motionless. At 5 feet 3 inches, she disappeared in the sea of combat uniforms and tactical vests. Her fingers moved across the tablet screen in her hands, tracing invisible patterns that only she could see. 47 red dots. She'd marked them all in the last 12 minutes, each one a machine gun nest, each one calculated with precision that would have impressed an artillery computer. Captain Lockwood, Major Bradley Garrett's voice sliced through the room like a blade drawn from its sheath. He turned toward her, his expression a mixture of frustration and dismissal. Do you understand that 7 men are dying out there right now? We need an actual plan, not whatever theoretical exercise you've been working on. Iris looked up. Once. Her eyes met his for exactly 2 seconds before returning to her screen. 38 minutes remaining, sir. Brennan spun away from the map, his hands sweeping across the projected terrain. I know exactly how many minutes we have left. Every second counts, which is why we're doing this by the book. Quick reaction force via helicopter, standard fire support, western approach vector. He jabbed his finger at the display. This is how we save lives. This is how we've always done it. Lieutenant Connor Hayes leaned back in his chair at the UAV control station, nodding with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned standard operating procedure. Right by doctrine, sir. Clean and simple. Iris's fingers never stopped moving across her screen. 47 red dots. She knew the exact distance between each position, knew the flight time for every ordnance type in the arsenal, knew the optimal firing angles, knew the kill sequence that would create a corridor of survival through enemy lines. She knew because she'd done this 140 times before, in mountains that made Kandahar look like a training ground, in weather that grounded every other asset in theater, in situations where one wrong calculation meant body bags instead of reunions. But nobody in this room knew that. They saw an intelligence officer, small, quiet, female, someone who analyzed satellite photos and wrote reports that other people acted on. 37 minutes, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Captain Sabira Wells leaned toward the communications officer beside her, not bothering to lower her voice. Someone should tell the intel specialist that counting down the clock doesn't actually help anything. A few scattered chuckles rippled through the nearby stations. But in the corner, Sergeant Jasper Reeves couldn't tear his eyes away from Iris's tablet screen. The angle wasn't perfect, but he'd caught glimpses. That map she was working on, that wasn't a standard intelligence overlay. Those weren't normal tactical symbols. That was a time-phased fire coordination grid, the kind that required understanding 3-dimensional ballistics, wind drift calculations, and aircraft performance parameters simultaneously. He'd seen maps like that exactly once before, during an operation in Helmand Province. The forward air controller who'd drawn that map had saved 32 Marines with a fire mission so precise it became classified training material. FX didn't work in operations centers. They worked on the ground, in the dirt, with the bullets. So, why did this intelligence officer have one on her personal device? The main radio crackled to life, cutting through the tension. TOC, this is Viper 6 Actual. We are combat ineffective in 3-5 mics. Enemy has elevation advantage and numerical superiority. Requesting immediate fire support. How copy? Staff Sergeant Mason Cross's voice carried the particular strain of a man watching his ammunition counter tick toward 0 while hostiles closed the perimeter. In the background of the transmission, the unmistakable crack of M4 carbines punctuated his words. Brennan grabbed the handset. Viper 6, TOC, solid copy. QRF is spinning up now. Hold position and mark your perimeter with IR strobes. Fire support inbound in 4-0 mics. A pause. Then Mason's voice came back, flatter than before. 4-0, sir, we won't last 4-0. You'll have to, Sergeant. That's the fastest we can get assets coordinated in 36 minutes. Iris hadn't raised her voice, hadn't moved from her position, but somehow the two words carried across the entire operations center like a bell in a silent cathedral. Bradley turned on her, his patience finally snapping. Lockwood, if you don't have anything constructive to contribute, I suggest you find somewhere else to count down the seconds until we lose 7 good men. She looked up again. This time her eyes held his for 3 full seconds. The Western approach will take 42 minutes from rotary launch to fire support initiation. Sergeant Cross and his team have 36 minutes of ammunition remaining based on current expenditure rate. The timeline doesn't work. The timeline is what we have. Bradley's face had gone red. Unless you've got a magic solution hidden in your intelligence reports. Iris's finger tapped once on her screen. Then she was silent again. Sabira whispered to another officer, loud enough for half the room to hear. Does she think she's helping? Because this is the opposite of helpful. Connor pulled up the Western approach vector on his display, checking aircraft availability. Sir, we have 2 Apaches spinning up, 1 AC-130 on station, and 3 Reaper drones in theater. Standard coordination time is 35 to 40 minutes once we commit. Then we commit now. Brennan pointed at the communications station. Get me JTAC on the line. I want a full fire support package built in the next 5 minutes. Iris's fingers moved again on her tablet. To anyone watching closely, the motion was too fast, too practiced. Her thumbs danced across the screen with the muscle memory of someone who'd performed the same action hundreds of times under pressure. She was building something, not reviewing intelligence data, building an actual operations plan. Jasper caught it, the way she angled her wrist, the way her eyes flickered between the drone feed on the main display and her personal screen, the way she shifted her weight, just slightly, into a posture he recognized from every forward air controller he'd ever worked with. That ready stance, that coiled awareness, like a pitcher about to throw. He opened his mouth to say something, then closed it. In a room full of majors and colonels, a sergeant questioning an officer's background felt like a good way to get sent to guard duty. What happens next will completely shatter everything these commanders think they know about warfare. But before we reveal how one silent captain turns an impossible mission into a legendary rescue, I need you to do something. Right now, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Why? Because in the next 15 minutes, you're about to witness the most precise military operation ever executed by a single operator. And trust me, you don't want to miss a single second of what's coming. The real shock? It hasn't even started yet. The operations center shifted into coordinated chaos. 3 junior officers scrambled to build the fire support package. Connor pulled up UAV feeds, designating loiter patterns. Another lieutenant coordinated with the Apache flight, confirming weapons loads and fuel states. The familiar rhythm of military planning took over, each person executing their piece of a well-rehearsed dance. Brennan stood at the center of it all, watching his plan come together with the satisfaction of a man who had seen this work 100 times before. Time to target? 41 minutes, sir. That includes coordination time and Western approach through the mountain pass. And Viper 6 has 36 minutes of ammunition. Bradley's voice carried a grim acceptance. They'll have to make it stretch. Radio discipline. Fire only when they have clean shots. Iris's screen showed something different. Her calculations told a story these men weren't seeing. The enemy positions weren't random. They formed an interlocking kill zone that would shred any helicopter approach from the west. The terrain channeled aircraft into a 2-kilometer choke point, covered by at least 15 anti-aircraft positions. Any rescue force would arrive just in time to become casualties themselves. Her fingers moved again. This time, they weren't analyzing. They were acting. She pulled up a secure terminal access screen. Her login credentials were standard intelligence officer clearances. Nothing special, nothing that should give her access to fire control systems. But her fingers knew other pathways, other back doors. The kind that existed for emergency situations when standard chains of command became obstacles instead of safeguards. 3 keystrokes. Then a password that shouldn't have existed in her clearance profile. The system accepted it without question. Connor's screen flickered, just for a second. a ghost in the machine. He frowned at his display, then shrugged it off as a network hiccup. Iris was already inside the UAV control architecture. Her screen now showed the same feed Connor was watching, but with additional layers. Targeting parameters, weapon status, fuel calculations. She wasn't just observing, she was preparing to take control. 20 minutes later, the operations center hummed with the confidence of a plan in motion. The QRF helicopters would launch in 10 minutes. Fire support assets were coordinating their approach vectors. Everything was proceeding according to doctrine. Iris hadn't moved from her corner. Her tablet screen glowed softly, showing patterns that nobody else was watching. Her breathing had shifted, though. Slower, deeper, the kind of controlled respiration that preceded action. In high-stakes military operations, communication reliability can mean the difference between life and death. That's why professional-grade encrypted communication devices have become essential for tactical coordination. These ruggedized systems feature military-spec encryption, real-time data transmission, and interference-resistant frequencies. Modern tactical tablets integrate satellite imagery, drone feeds, and secure messaging in a single device. With battery life exceeding 72 hours and waterproof ratings, these tools ensure mission-critical information flows seamlessly, even in the most hostile environments. Sabira moved past Iris toward the coffee station, not bothering to hide her disdain. Must be nice to just stand there while the real operators do the work. Iris didn't respond. Her eyes remained fixed on her screen, where a three-dimensional battlefield map was taking shape. Not the standard two-dimensional overlay everyone else worked with. A full tactical sphere showing elevation data, wind patterns, thermal signatures, and predictive enemy movement patterns. The kind of map that required understanding aerospace physics, terrain analysis, and combat psychology simultaneously. Jasper caught another glimpse. This time he moved closer, pretending to check a equipment status board near Iris's position. He saw enough to confirm what he'd suspected. That wasn't intelligence work. That was mission planning at a level he had only seen from Air Force Special Operations. "Captain," his voice was low enough that only she could hear. "What are you building?" She glanced at him, a single look that lasted less than a second. But in that moment, Jasper saw something that made his blood run cold. Not fear, not uncertainty. Complete and total tactical awareness. The look of someone who had seen worse situations than this, and walked away while others didn't. "Insurance," she whispered back. Then her fingers moved again, and 3 Reaper drones shifted position on Connor's display. "Sir?" Connor's voice carried confusion. "Reaper flight just altered course. I didn't send that command." Bradley looked up from his planning table. "Then who did?" "Unknown, sir. The course change came from a priority override, coded authorization." Brennan's attention snapped to the display. "What priority level?" Connor checked his logs, his face going pale. "Tier 1, sir. JSOC Direct Action Authority." The room went quiet. Joint Special Operations Command didn't issue override codes lightly. That level of authority meant someone with serious operational credentials was taking control. "We'll find out who it is and shut them down." Bradley's voice rose. "We've got a coordinated plan here. We don't need some desk jockey at Bragg playing with our assets." But Iris's fingers were already 3 steps ahead. The drones weren't just moving, they were positioning, building a 3-dimensional network of observation points that would give complete battlefield coverage. She was constructing an aerial chessboard, placing her pieces with the precision of someone who'd played this game before, and won. Her screen showed what nobody else could see yet. The enemy wasn't just dug in, they were waiting. Those positions weren't defensive, they were an ambush specifically designed to destroy any Western approach. Intel had missed it. Standard reconnaissance had missed it. But the thermal patterns told the story. Those weren't soldiers trying to survive. Those were soldiers confident in victory, waiting for targets to enter their kill zone. Mason's voice came through again, tighter than before. "TOC, Viper 6, we are now at 7 minutes remaining. Request immediate update on fire support timeline. Viper 6, stand by." Brennan grabbed the radio. "You're going to have to hold another 15 mics. Help is coming." "Copy. We'll do what we can." The resignation in Mason's voice hit everyone in the room. 15 minutes felt like an eternity when you were counting bullets. Iris's fingers stopped moving. She'd finished her calculations, finished her positioning. The board was set. Every piece was in place. Now came the part she'd been avoiding for 3 years. The part where she stopped hiding behind intelligence reports and analysis papers. The part where she became what she'd been trying to leave behind. She took one slow breath, then she tapped the execute command. Connor's console erupted in alerts. "Sir, we've got multiple unauthorized commands executing across the entire air package. Someone's taking direct control of our assets." "I said shut it down!" Bradley slammed his hand on the nearest table. "I'm trying, sir. The override codes are locked. I can't regain control." Brennan moved to Connor's station, watching as the drone feeds began shifting, not randomly, with purpose, with precision, the kind of coordination that required understanding how each aircraft's capabilities complemented the others, how their weapon systems could create interlocking fields of fire, how timing could turn separate attacks into a symphony of destruction. Who is doing this? Brennan's voice carried both anger and something else, a hint of professional curiosity, because whoever was controlling those assets knew exactly what they were doing. Iris stepped forward, not into the center of the room, just enough that her voice would carry. 33 minutes remaining, sir." All eyes turned to her. Bradley's face flushed red. You're the one interfering with our operation?" "No, sir." Her voice remained calm, almost gentle. "I'm saving 7 lives. By hijacking our aircraft?" Bradley started toward her, his hands balled into fists. "You just committed a court-martial offense, Captain." "Connor, get security in here. I want her removed from this operations center immediately." But Jasper was watching the tactical display, and what he saw made him forget about protocol, forget about rank, forget about everything except the unfolding masterpiece on those screens. The drones weren't just repositioning, they were building overlapping fields of observation that covered every single enemy position. The Apaches were shifting to hull-down positions that would let them engage targets while remaining protected by terrain. The AC-130 was entering an orbit pattern that would give it firing solutions on targets the other assets couldn't reach. It was perfect. It was beautiful. It was something he'd only seen once before, in Helmand, when a forward air controller, with a legendary reputation, had orchestrated an extraction that became a case study at every advanced warfare school in the military. "Sir." His voice cut through Bradley's tirade. "Look at the pattern." "What pattern? This is chaos." "No, sir. It's coordination. Professional-level air-ground coordination. Look at the spacing. Look at the timing windows. Look at the—" His voice trailed off as realization hit him like a physical blow. Brennan saw it too. His anger shifted to something else, confusion mixed with dawning comprehension. "Those are FAC patterns, forward air controller techniques." "Impossible." Bradley shook his head. "She's an intelligence officer. She doesn't have that training." Iris's screen showed 32 minutes remaining. The pieces were in motion, the symphony was building, and she was the conductor who had written every note. "Captain Lockwood," Brennan's voice had lost its anger, replaced by dangerous calm. "Explain what you're doing, right now." She looked up from her tablet. Her eyes swept across the room, meeting each person's gaze for exactly 1 second. Then she spoke, and her voice carried a weight that made everyone stop moving. "The western approach is a kill box, sir. Enemy positions are optimized for helicopter ambush. Your QRF will be destroyed before they can provide effective support. Standard fire coordination will take 42 minutes to execute. Viper 6 will be overrun in 32. The math doesn't work, so I'm changing the equation. By taking unauthorized control of military assets," Bradley found his voice again. "That's not how we do things. We have a chain of command for a reason. The chain of command was about to kill 7 SEALs, sir. No hesitation, no apology, just cold tactical reality." Sabira stepped forward, her voice dripping with contempt. "Colonel Brennan, this is insane. She's an analyst. She writes reports. She doesn't command fire missions. For all we know, she's about to get our people killed through sheer incompetence." But the displays told a different story. The drones had reached their positions. Their cameras now provided complete coverage of the enemy formation. And what they showed made several officers in the room draw sharp breaths. "Holy cow!" Connor whispered it, but everyone heard. "Sir, the enemy positions, they're not defensive. Look at the angles. Look at the weapons placement. Captain Lockwood is right. It's a kill box. They were waiting for us." Brennan stared at the screen, then at Iris, then back at the screen. "How did you know?" "Thermal signatures, sir. Movement patterns, equipment placement. They weren't hiding from observation. They were hiding their true purpose, Standard Recon missed it because Standard Recon looks for defensive postures. I was looking for ambush tactics. And you learned to identify ambush tactics from intelligence training? Brennan's question carried weight beyond the words. Iris didn't answer. Her fingers were moving again, building the next phase of her operation. The drones had provided observation. Now came targeting. Each enemy position needed to be prioritized. Some could be ignored. Some needed immediate destruction. Some needed to be destroyed in a specific sequence to prevent mutual support. This was the art. The part that couldn't be taught from a book. The part that required understanding how soldiers thought, how they moved, how they died. The part she'd learned in mountains and deserts, calling in fire missions while bullets turned the air into geometry lessons about velocity and trajectory. Connor's display suddenly showed targeting data flowing across every enemy position. Not random designations, prioritized sequences. Sir, someone's building a complete fire mission package. Time-phased targeting with calculated impact intervals. I've never seen coordination this detailed. Who's authorizing these target packages? Brennan demanded. Connor checked his logs again. His hands started shaking. Authorization code is showing Phantom 7, sir. The name hit Jasper like a physical blow. He actually stepped backward, his hand gripping the edge of a console for support. Phantom 7, the legendary Phase C, the ghost who had saved more lives than anyone could count. The operator who'd called in fire missions that defied physics, who'd coordinated airstrikes with surgical precision, who'd become a whispered legend in special operations communities. Phantom 7 was supposedly retired, out of the game, gone to some quiet desk job after Takur Gar. But here was that call sign, executing a fire mission in real time, from inside this very operations center. Jasper's eyes moved to Iris, small, quiet, standing in the corner like she'd been invisible her entire career. No, he breathed. It can't be. Bradley was still stuck on operational details, missing the bigger picture. I don't care what call sign she's using. Connor, cut her access. Now. I've been trying, sir. The override codes are JSOC level. I don't have authority to countermand them. Then get me someone who does. But Brennan was staring at Iris with new eyes. Phantom 7. The name resonated with him. He'd heard the stories. Every commander in theater had heard the stories. A forward air controller who could see 3 dimensions of battle space in her head. Who calculated artillery trajectories like other people did simple arithmetic. Who'd never lost a friendly unit under her protection. Captain Lockwood, his voice had changed completely. What was your assignment before you transferred to intelligence? She met his eyes. I'm currently executing a fire mission, sir. I can discuss my service record after Viper 6 is safe. That wasn't a request, Captain. And 7 lives aren't a negotiating position, sir. Her fingers kept moving. In 28 minutes, you'll have your answers. Right now, I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing. Trust? Bradley laughed, harsh and bitter. You've violated every regulation in the book. You've hijacked operational control. You've refused to follow direct orders. And you want us to trust you? Iris finally looked away from her screen, giving Bradley her full attention for the first time. Major, respectfully, I don't need you to trust me. I need you to not interfere while I save lives you've already written off as acceptable losses. The words hit like a slap. Bradley's face went from red to purple. How dare you? 27 minutes, Iris cut him off. You can have me arrested after we extract Viper 6. Until then, I suggest you watch and learn. She turned back to her tablet, ending the conversation through sheer force of will. Her fingers danced across the screen, and on the main displays, the 8 air assets began their approach. Not as separate elements, as a coordinated unit, each one timed to support the others. Each one positioned to cover the other's vulnerabilities. Connor found himself watching in professional awe despite his confusion. Sir, this coordination is textbook perfect. Better than textbook. The timing windows are calculated down to the second. Then who's flying? Brennan asked. Because I know our pilots aren't this synchronized. They're not flying, sir. The aircraft are on autopilot, following programmed routes. But the routes are so complex, so precisely calculated. Connor shook his head. I don't know how anyone could plan this in real time. Jasper did. He knew exactly how someone could plan this. Because he had watched it happen before, watching a small figure in combat gear orchestrate an extraction that saved 32 Marines while enemy fire turned the sky into tracer hell. That FAC had moved like Iris was moving now, with calm certainty, with absolute confidence in calculations nobody else could see. "Sir," he spoke up, his voice carrying across the operations center. "I think we should let Captain Lockwood finish." Bradley rounded on him. "Sergeant, you're out of line." "Maybe, sir, but I've seen this before, in Helmond, when Phantom 7 pulled off the impossible to save 2nd Battalion. Phantom 7 is a myth," Sabira interjected. "War stories that got exaggerated over bad coffee." But several of the older operators in the room had gone very still. They had heard those stories too, and some of them had been there, had witnessed fire missions that redefined what was possible with air support. "If Phantom 7 is a myth," Jasper said quietly, "then explain how Captain Lockwood is executing Phantom 7's signature tactics right now." Brennan grabbed a handset. "Get me General Caldwell, video link, priority alpha." The main screen flickered, then showed the stern face of Lieutenant General Martha Caldwell, the Theater Command's senior operations officer. She'd clearly been woken up, but her eyes were sharp and focused. "Colonel Brennan, this had better be important." "Ma'am, we have a situation. One of my intelligence officers has taken unauthorized control of a fire support package and is executing an unplanned air operation." Martha's expression didn't change. "Casualties?" "None yet, but..." "Then let me rephrase. Is your intelligence officer successfully executing the air operation?" Brennan glanced at the displays. 8 aircraft moving in perfect harmony, target packages being updated in real time. Coordination that would make a JTTAC instructor weep with joy. "Yes, ma'am. Exceptionally well, actually. Then I suggest you shut up and let her work, Colonel." "Ma'am, she's using the call sign Phantom 7. For the first time, Martha's composure cracked. Her eyes widened fractionally. "Say again?" "The override codes show Phantom 7 authorization. I need to know who that is and what authority they have to take over my operation." Martha was silent for 3 long seconds. Then she leaned forward, her face filling the screen. "Colonel, I'm going to give you a direct order. You will allow this operation to continue without interference. You will not attempt to countermand any commands. You will observe and report. Is that understood?" "Ma'am, I need to know..." "That's not a request, Colonel. That's an order from your theater commander. Execute immediately." The screen went dark. The operations center fell silent. Everyone stared at the blank display, processing what had just happened. A 3-star general had just told a colonel to stand down and let a captain run the show. Bradley found his voice first. "This is insane. We're letting one person hijack an entire operation based on orders from General Caldwell." Brennan cut him off. "Which means we're done questioning. Start documenting. I want every screen recorded, every transmission logged, because when this is over, we're going to have some very serious questions to answer." Iris's fingers never stopped moving. 25 minutes remaining. The first phase was complete. Observation and targeting established. Now came the hard part. The actual fire mission. The part where timing mattered more than accuracy. Where 1 second too early meant wasted ordnance. 1 second too late meant friendly casualties. Her screen showed the battlefield in her mind's eye. 3-dimensional chess with lethal pieces. The Apaches would engage first, drawing attention and suppressing key positions. The Reaper drones would follow, their Hellfire missiles taking out anti-aircraft emplacements. The AC-130 would provide overhead support, its 40mm guns walking destruction across enemy lines. And the F-16, currently loitering at 20,000 feet, would deliver the final blow if needed. All of it had to happen in precise 18 minutes. All of it had to flow like water, each action enabling the next. All of it had to be perfect, because perfect was the only option when lives hung in the balance. You're probably wondering how she's doing this, how one person can coordinate 8 separate aircraft in real time. The answer is coming, and it's going to blow your mind. But first, smash that like button if you're as amazed as I am right now. Because what happens in the next 5 minutes will change everything you thought you knew about military tactics. The displays showed the Apache flight entering their attack positions. Iris's voice, when it came through the command net, carried the calm authority of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. "Apache 1, Phantom 7. You are cleared hot on grid 7942. Engage southernmost positions first. Watch your altitude. You've got RPG teams at 2 o'clock high. The Apache pilot's response carried surprise. Phantom 7, how did you know about the RPGs? They're not marked on our display. Thermal signature analysis. They're trying to stay hidden, but their weapons are 30 degrees hotter than ambient. Take them out first, then work north. Copy, Phantom 7. Apache 1, engaging. The main display showed the first Hellfire missile launch, 3 seconds of flight, then an explosion bloom that eliminated an entire machine gun nest. The second missile followed 6 seconds later, perfect timing to catch any survivors before they could reposition. Connor watched in fascination. The spacing, that's calculated to prevent mutual support. She's not just hitting targets, she's dismantling their entire defensive structure. Reaper 2, Phantom 7, target package incoming. You're engaging grid positions 813 through 817. 5 targets, 7 seconds between impacts. Execute on my mark. The Reaper drone pilot acknowledged, and moments later, another series of precisely timed explosions walked across enemy positions like a giant's footsteps. Iris's hands moved constantly, adjusting for wind shift, correcting for aircraft drift, compensating for ammunition variance. She wasn't just calling in fire, she was conducting an orchestra of destruction, each instrument perfectly timed to create a symphony that would give Viper 6 a chance to survive. Mason's voice came through, filled with new hope. TOC, Viper 6, enemy fire is decreasing significantly. What's going on out there? Viper 6, maintain your position. Help is arriving. Brennan's voice carried new respect. In the corner, Sabira watched the displays with growing unease. This wasn't supposed to be possible. Intelligence officers didn't execute fire missions. They provided data for others to act on. They were analysts, not operators. Yet, here was Captain Lockwood, small and quiet and supposedly unremarkable, orchestrating the most complex air operation Sabira had ever witnessed, and she was making it look easy. 8 to 130, Phantom 7, time to shine. I need suppressive fire on grid positions 921 through 925. Walk your fire north to south, 3-second intervals. Viper 6 is about to make a break for extraction, and I need you to keep heads down. The AC-130 gunner responded with professional respect that made everyone in the operations center notice. Phantom 7, it's an honor. Commencing fire run. Bradley caught it. Did that gunner just say it's an honor? He's never even met her. But Jasper understood. That gunner had recognized the call sign, had worked with Phantom 7 before, and anyone who had flown with Phantom 7 remembered the experience. The 40mm cannon opened up, its distinctive sound echoing across the radio. Each round hit with precision that defied the platform's capabilities. The gunner was good, but Iris's targeting data was better. Together, they created a wall of fire that no enemy soldier would dare challenge. Viper 6, Phantom 7, you have a corridor opening in 2 minutes. Grid route Echo 77, proceed on my mark. You'll have exactly 6 minutes of clear passage before they can reposition. Don't stop. Don't engage unless absolutely necessary. Just run. Copy, Phantom 7, we'll be ready. 19 minutes had elapsed, 8 air assets working in perfect synchronization, 143 enemy positions identified and prioritized, 47 threats eliminated, 0 friendly casualties, and in the corner of the operations center, a small intelligence officer held all the strings, moving them with the skill of someone who had spent years mastering this deadly art. Brennan stood beside Connor's station, watching the displays with the expression of a man seeing something he had never expected. Her timing is flawless. Every aircraft knows exactly what the others are doing. How is that possible? Connor shook his head slowly. Sir, I've been coordinating air operations for 6 years. This level of integration usually requires a team of specialists working together. She's doing it alone, in real time, while compensating for variables I didn't even know existed. 23 minutes, Iris said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. Her eyes moved between 3 different screens now, tracking aircraft positions, target status, and friendly locations simultaneously. Most people would have been overwhelmed by the data density. She processed it like breathing. Military veterans transitioning to civilian life often face unique financial challenges. Specialized investment advisory services now cater specifically to former service members, offering portfolio strategies that account for military pensions, VA benefits, and combat zone tax exclusions. These programs provide risk-assessed investment plans, retirement optimization, and estate planning tailored to military careers. With advisors who understand deployment cycles and military compensation structures, veterans can maximize their financial security. Many services offer no initial consultation fees and transparent percentage-based management structures. The Reaper drones had completed their attack runs. 12 targets eliminated with zero collateral damage. The precision was surgical. Each missile had found exactly what it was meant to find, nothing more. "Sir, I'm getting a request from General Caldwell." Connor looked up. "She wants access to our tactical feeds, full real-time link." "Granted." Brennan didn't hesitate. If the theater commander wanted to watch, she had every right. On a screen far from FUB Wolverine, Martha Caldwell sat forward in her chair, her coffee forgotten as she watched the operation unfold. She recognized the patterns immediately, had seen them before, in after-action reports that became legendary. Reports she'd personally classified because the public didn't need to know what was possible when you combined perfect training with perfect execution. She reached for her encrypted phone, making a call that would change everything. "I need classified service records opened. Immediate authorization. Subject is Captain Iris Lockwood, currently assigned to FOB Wolverine Intelligence Section." A pause. "Yes, I know they're sealed. I'm unsealing them. Authorization code Delta 77 Charlie. Presidential approval level." Another pause, longer this time. "I understand the sensitivity. Open them anyway. That's an order." Back at FOB Wolverine, Iris's coordination had reached its crescendo. All 8 assets were engaged now, working in patterns that defied conventional tactical doctrine. The Apaches provided mobile firepower, constantly repositioning to maintain optimal firing angles. The Reapers eliminated precision targets. The AC-130 created walls of suppression, and the F-16 waited overhead, its pilot ready to deliver ordnance if the situation deteriorated. But it wouldn't deteriorate. Iris wouldn't allow it. "Viper 6, Phantom 7, your corridor is open. Execute extraction now. Move with purpose." "Phantom 7, Viper 6, we're moving." Mason's voice carried gratitude and confusion in equal measure. "I don't know who you are, but you just saved 7 lives." "That's my job, Sergeant. Now run." On the displays, the SEAL team began their withdrawal. They moved fast, using terrain and cover, with the skill of professionals who understood survival. Behind them, carefully orchestrated explosions continued to eliminate threats before they could reorganize. Bradley watched it all unfold, his earlier anger transforming into something else. Confusion, maybe, or the beginning of comprehension. She planned all of this, every step, before we even knew we needed it. "Forward air controllers plan for contingencies," Jasper said quietly. "The good ones plan for everything. The legendary ones," he gestured at the screens, "they plan for scenarios nobody else can see coming." Sabira's phone had fallen silent. She wasn't making snide comments anymore, wasn't questioning authority. She just stared at the tactical displays, watching precision warfare executed by someone she'd dismissed as insignificant. 15 minutes, Iris said. Her voice remained calm, but Connor noticed her breathing had shifted. Deeper, more controlled, the kind of breathing pattern that prevented adrenaline shake during long operations. She'd done this before, many times before. The question was, where? And why was she hiding that experience behind an intelligence officer's desk? Connor's console suddenly flashed a new alert. "Sir, I'm receiving a classified file download. Security level is... Holy cow, it's Tier 1 classified. I need additional clearance just to open it. What's the file name?" Brennan leaned over to look. "Service record. Subject, Captain Iris Lockwood." Connor's hands froze over his keyboard. "Sir, this file is marked with JSOC oversight. That's Special Operations Command. Why would an intelligence officer have JSOC involvement in their records?" Brennan felt cold understanding creeping up his spine. "Open it." "Sir, I don't have..." "I said open it. I'll take responsibility." Connor clicked the file. The first page loaded, and half the operations center went silent as people near enough to see caught glimpses of the text. Forward Air Controller, Ghost Unit 7, Takur Gar, 140 combat missions, 0 civilian casualties. Survival rate, 100%. Bradley read it over Connor's shoulder, his face going pale. That's not possible. Ghost Unit 7 was disbanded in 2011, after Takur Gar. The only survivor was... He stopped. His eyes went to Iris, then back to the screen, then to Iris again. Was Phantom 7, Jasper finished quietly. The only FAC in Special Operations history to call in a fire mission while under direct fire for 11 straight hours. The person who saved an entire platoon when everyone else said it was impossible. Iris's fingers kept moving. 13 minutes. The extraction was proceeding perfectly. All 8 air assets remained mission capable. No friendly casualties. Enemy forces were in complete disarray, unable to reorganize under the relentless precision of coordinated fire. Everything was working exactly as she'd calculated, exactly as she'd planned, exactly as she'd done 140 times before, in places where one mistake meant flag-draped coffins and families who'd never be whole again. Brennan moved toward her position, his boots heavy on the operations center floor. When he spoke, his voice carried across the room. "Captain Lockwood, ma'am, I need to ask you a direct question." She glanced up, her eyes meeting his for exactly 2 seconds before returning to her screens. "Ask, sir. Are you Phantom 7? The entire operations center held its breath. Iris's fingers continued their dance across the tablet screen. "I'm currently executing a fire mission, Colonel. Personal history can wait." That wasn't a denial. It also wasn't a confirmation, sir. 12 minutes remaining. I need to focus. But Bradley had moved closer too, reading more of the file over Connor's shoulder. His voice shook slightly when he spoke. "Tucker Gar, 2011. Operation Enduring Freedom. A forward air controller kept 16 soldiers alive while calling in fire missions under sustained enemy fire. He paused, the pronoun finally registering. She coordinated 9 different air assets across 11 hours of combat. No casualties. 57 enemy killed. The operation became classified because the tactics used were considered too valuable for public knowledge." He looked at Iris, really looked at her. Small frame, quiet demeanor, the person he'd dismissed as just another desk officer who didn't understand real operations. "That was you." Iris's screen showed 11 minutes. The final phase was approaching, the part where all her planning would either succeed completely or fail catastrophically. No middle ground, no partial victories. 7 men would live or die based on whether her calculations were perfect. "Major Bradley," she said without looking up, "respectfully, I don't care whether you believe my service record. I care about getting 7 SEALs home alive. Everything else is noise." Her calm certainty made him take a step back. This wasn't the uncertain intelligence officer he had belittled. This was someone who had seen combat he couldn't imagine, who had made decisions under pressure he'd never face, who had earned respect he'd never understand, and he'd called her incompetent. Sabira approached slowly, her earlier confidence evaporated. "Captain Lockwood, She struggled to find words. "I didn't know." "Nobody did, Captain Wells." Iris's voice remained neutral. "That was the point. I transferred to intelligence to get away from operations, to stop making life and death decisions, to stop carrying responsibility for people who trust me to keep them alive." She paused, her fingers never stopping their movement. "But tonight, 7 men needed someone who could do impossible things. So, here we are." The radio crackled. "Phantom 7, Viper 6. We've reached the extraction point. Birds inbound. You actually pulled this off." "Not yet, Sergeant. Hold position for 7 more minutes. I need to make sure you have clear air to extract." "Copy. Standing by." Connor watched the tactical display with new understanding. Every move Iris had made had been building toward this moment. The suppression patterns, the target prioritization, the timing sequences, all of it designed to create exactly 7 minutes of clear airspace for helicopters to land, load, and depart without taking fire. It was masterful. It was brilliant. It was the kind of operational planning that military schools would study for decades. And she'd done it in under 30 minutes, while being questioned and dismissed by her own command structure. "Captain Lockwood," Brennan said formally, "I owe you an apology." "You owe me silence while I finish, sir. No anger, no resentment, just tactical focus." 6 minutes remaining. She was right. This wasn't over. Enemy forces were adapting, regrouping. They'd figured out something was coordinating the airstrikes and were trying to disperse to make targeting harder. But Iris had anticipated that too. Her screens showed predictive movement patterns, calculating where enemy soldiers would flee and positioning air assets to cut off those routes. She wasn't just reacting to the battlefield, she was shaping it. forcing the enemy to make choices that led them into kill zones, using their own tactical training against them. It was psychological warfare combined with physics, and the result was enemy forces that couldn't find safety no matter where they moved. Jasper had seen it before, but watching it happen in real time was different. This was art, deadly art, but art nonetheless. 5 minutes, Iris said. Her voice remained steady, but Connor noticed sweat on her forehead now. The stress of maintaining this level of coordination was showing. Not much, but enough to prove she was human, not some tactical computer. The extraction helicopters appeared on the edge of the tactical display. 2 Blackhawks, flying low and fast. They'd be at the pickup zone in 4 minutes, which meant Iris had to maintain perfect suppression for 4 more minutes, had to keep enemy heads down, had to prevent any lucky shots from taking down a helicopter, had to coordinate all 8 air assets in perfect harmony while accounting for fuel states, ammunition counts, and aircraft positioning. For 4 more minutes, she had to be flawless. And then Bradley made a mistake. He stepped closer, trying to see her tablet screen more clearly. His shoulder brushed her arm, just barely, just enough to throw off her balance for a fraction of a second. She turned, muscle memory from years of close-quarters training taking over. Her hand came up in a defensive posture, her body shifting to maintain stability. The movement was pure reflex, pure combat training, pure special operations conditioning. And her sleeve, caught on Bradley's uniform button, tore. Time seemed to slow. The fabric ripped from shoulder to elbow, exposing her left arm in the bright fluorescent lights of the operations center, exposing what she'd kept hidden for 3 years, exposing the truth written in ink and memory on her skin. A tattoo, large, detailed, impossible to mistake. A black eagle with wings spread wide, the symbol of Joint Special Operations Command. Inside the eagle's body, the number 7 in bold relief. And around the eagle's wings, wrapped in precise military typography, a set of coordinates. N34.5 dig, E69.2 dig, Takur Khar. Below that, smaller but no less significant, a list of operations. Not names, just dates. Just proof of missions that existed in classified files and whispered legends. And at the bottom, in letters that seemed to burn in the operations center lights, Phantom 7, Ghost Unit FAC. The silence was absolute, total, complete. 42 military personnel stared at that tattoo, at those coordinates, at that call sign. Understanding crashed over the room like a tidal wave. Stop. Before we reveal her true identity, I need you to hit the share button. Why? Because what you're about to see is the most shocking revelation in modern military history. The screen is about to show something that will make everyone in that room freeze. And when it does, you'll understand why this story has over 90 million views. Jasper's whispered words carried across the silence. Holy cow. The display screen still showed the operation in progress, the helicopters approaching. The enemy forces suppressed, but not eliminated. The mission at its most critical phase. But nobody was watching the screens anymore. They were watching Iris Lockwood, small, quiet, the intelligence officer who had been invisible for 3 years, the person they had dismissed, belittled, ignored, the woman who had been content to work in the shadows, analyzing data and writing reports while others made the decisions, the legend who had saved more lives than anyone could count. Phantom 7. Dylan Foster, the chief warrant officer who had been quiet throughout the entire operation, stood slowly from his position near the back of the operations center. His hand came up, steady and sure, into a full military salute. His voice carried the weight of personal knowledge, of shared history, of respect that transcended rank. Ma'am, one word, but it said everything. The salute hung in the air like a thunderclap. Dylan Foster held his position, arm rigid, eyes fixed on Iris with the intensity of someone who'd flown through hell and lived to remember the voice that guided him home. Brennan's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes moved from the tattoo to Dylan's salute to the tactical displays showing 8 aircraft still executing their mission with mechanical precision. The colonel's hand rose slowly, almost against his will, matching Dylan's salute with parade ground perfection. Captain Lockwood? His voice cracked slightly. Ma'am? Bradley stood frozen, his face cycling through emotions faster than Connor could track. Shock, disbelief, dawning horror at his own words from minutes before. The major's hand trembled as it came up in salute, his throat working soundlessly. Sabira had gone pale, her phone slipping from nerveless fingers to clatter on the operations center floor. The sound snapped several junior officers out of their paralysis. One by one, hands rose. Salutes multiplied across the room like ripples in a pond. 42 military personnel standing at attention for a captain who'd been invisible 30 seconds ago. But Iris wasn't watching them. Her eyes remained locked on her tablet screen, where a countdown showed 3 minutes 40 seconds remaining. Her fingers moved with the same steady precision they'd maintained throughout the operation, entering commands that would keep 7 men alive through the most dangerous phase of their extraction. "At ease," she said quietly, not looking up. "This mission isn't finished." Nobody moved. The salutes remained frozen in place, arms aching but unwavering. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't regulation. This was something deeper, something that transcended the normal military hierarchy. This was respect. Dylan finally lowered his arm, but his eyes never left Iris. "I flew for you in Helmand Province, ma'am. August 14th, 2010. You called in fire support that saved 13 Marines while we were taking ground fire from 3 directions. I didn't know your face, never saw you in person, but I'd recognize that voice anywhere. The way you stayed calm while the world was ending. The way you always knew exactly where every aircraft was, even when we didn't know ourselves." 3 minutes 20, Iris said, her tone unchanged, but Connor caught the slight tightening around her eyes, the faint compression of her lips. She was human after all, behind the tactical mask. "Apache 1, Phantom 7. Shift fire to grid 937. Extraction birds are 2 minutes out. I need suppression on the ridgeline. Copy, Phantom 7. The Apache pilot's voice carried new reverence. "It's an honor to fly for you again, ma'am." Jasper approached slowly, his movements careful, like he was approaching something fragile. "Ma'am, at Sangin, 2011, you coordinated a case vac under fire. The FAC kept talking to us the whole time, told us stories, kept us focused, kept us alive. That was you." Iris's fingers paused for half a heartbeat, then resumed their motion. "Focus on the present, Sergeant. History can wait." But the operations center couldn't wait, couldn't process this normally. Connor pulled up more of the classified file, his hands shaking as he read details that rewrote everything he thought he knew about modern warfare. "Takur Gar, 2011, his voice carried across the room. 16 soldiers pinned down on a mountain ridge, 5 wounded. No extraction possible due to weather and enemy fire. Standard procedure said to withdraw and accept casualties. But Phantom 7 called in 9 different air assets across 11 hours. She talked pilots through conditions that should have grounded them, coordinated strikes with precision measured in single meters, kept talking to the ground force the entire time, keeping them calm, keeping them focused. By the time extraction was possible, all 16 were alive. 57 enemy eliminated. 0 friendly casualties. 0 collateral damage." He looked up from the screen, his face showing something close to awe. "The after-action report says she didn't sleep for 36 hours. Didn't eat. Just maintained constant communication and coordination until everyone was safe. The commanding general wanted to give her a Medal of Honor. She refused. Said she was just doing her job." 2 minutes 30, Iris said. The extraction helicopters were visible on the displays now, 2 dark shapes racing across the Afghan landscape at dangerous speeds. "Viper 6, Phantom 7, birds are inbound. Pop purple smoke on my mark. Standing by, Phantom 7. Bradley found his voice, though it came out hoarse and uncertain. "Ma'am, I didn't know. If I had known, you would have treated me differently." Iris's eyes flicked up for 1 second, meeting his. "Which is exactly why I didn't tell anyone. I transferred to intelligence because I was tired of being Phantom 7, tired of carrying responsibility for lives, tired of perfect missions where one mistake means someone's child never comes home. I wanted to be invisible, to analyze data and let other people make the hard decisions." Her fingers moved across the screen with renewed intensity. "But tonight, 7 men needed Phantom 7, so here I am. And after tonight, I'll go back to being invisible. Because this," she gestured at the screens, at the coordinated chaos of her fire mission, "this takes pieces of your soul every single time, and I've given enough pieces already." The tactical display showed the helicopters entering the pickup zone. Iris's coordination reached its apex, every air asset working in concert to create a bubble of safety around the landing site. The Apaches suppressed the ridgeline. The Reaper drones eliminated targets attempting to reposition. The AC-130 laid down a wall of fire that no sane person would cross. Viper 6, mark your position, now! Purple smoke billowed from the valley floor, a violent splash of color against the darkness. The helicopters banked hard, their pilots executing approach patterns that spoke of absolute trust in the intelligence they were receiving. 1 minute 40, Iris said. Apache 1, watch your 6. You've got movement at grid 941. Phantom 7, Apache 1. I don't see anything on thermals. Trust me, they're using cold weapons. RPGs. Engage now. The Apache pilot didn't hesitate, didn't question, didn't doubt. If Phantom 7 said there was a threat, there was a threat. The helicopter's 30mm chain guns spoke, and seconds later, secondary explosions confirmed what Iris had somehow known. Connor shook his head in disbelief. How did you see that? The thermal signature was identical to background terrain. Pattern recognition, Iris replied, her focus never wavering. RPG teams move differently than regular infantry. Their posture compensates for weapon weight. Once you've seen it enough times, you can identify it even without clear thermals. 140 missions, Jasper breathed. That's how you've seen it enough times. The helicopters touched down. Connor watched the displays with professional appreciation for what he was witnessing. The timing was flawless. The suppression patterns gave the SEAL team exactly 60 seconds to board without taking effective fire. Not 59 seconds, not 61, exactly 60, because Iris had calculated it down to that level of precision. Viper 6 aboard, Mason's voice crackled through. All 7 accounted for. We're up. The helicopters lifted off, banking hard and low, using terrain masking to break line of sight with enemy positions. Iris's hands moved faster now, repositioning assets to provide cover during the most vulnerable phase of the extraction. Apache flight, provide rear cover. AC-130, maintain suppression for 90 more seconds. Reaper elements, shift to overwatch positions. The aircraft responded immediately, moving with the synchronization of a drill team. 90 seconds. That was how long the helicopters needed to reach safety, how long Iris needed to maintain perfect coordination to ensure nobody took a lucky shot. Connor's console showed fuel states reaching critical levels on several aircraft. Ammunition counts dropping into yellow. The operation had pushed every asset to its limits. But Iris had known that, had calculated it, had determined that they'd have exactly enough to finish the mission with nothing to spare. 90 seconds passed like 90 hours. Every person in the operations center watched the displays with held breath, waiting for the moment when the extraction would be complete and 7 lives would be safely beyond the reach of enemy fire. Finally, Iris's shoulders dropped fractionally. Her fingers stilled on the tablet screen. Her eyes closed for exactly 3 seconds. Viper 6 is clear of engagement area, she said quietly. All assets, return to base. Mission complete. The operations center erupted, not with cheers or celebration, with something quieter but more profound. A collective exhalation of tension that had been building for the past 40 minutes. People sagged against their consoles. Hands that had been gripping screens too tightly slowly relaxed. Connor pulled up the mission statistics, reading them aloud in a voice that carried disbelief. 18 minutes from first engagement to extraction. 8 air assets coordinated simultaneously. 47 enemy positions eliminated. 0 friendly casualties. 0 collateral damage. 0... He stopped, checking the numbers again. Ma'am, you didn't waste a single piece of ordnance. Every missile hit a target. Every round served a purpose. The efficiency rate is 100%. Ammunition is expensive, Iris said simply, and unnecessary death serves no tactical purpose. She looked down at her torn sleeve, at the tattoo that had ended 3 years of anonymity in a single moment. Her fingers traced the coordinates absently, following lines she'd probably touched 1,000 times in the darkness when old memories made sleep impossible. Dylan approached, his steps careful and respectful. Ma'am, after Helmand, I tried to find you, wanted to thank the person who had saved my crew, but your identity was classified. Nobody would tell me anything except a call sign. Phantom 7, the ghost who kept us alive. I'm not a ghost, Chief. Iris met his eyes. Just someone who's good at math and bad at letting people die. You're more than that, ma'am. You're the reason 13 families didn't get folded flags. The reason those Marines got to go home and see their kids grow up. That's not just math. The main display flickered, and Lieutenant General Martha Caldwell's face reappeared. But this time, her expression had changed. The stern military bearing had softened into something that looked almost like concern. "Captain Lockwood," she said formally, "on behalf of Theater Command, I want to thank you for your exceptional performance tonight. 7 American service members owe you their lives." "They owe the pilots their lives, ma'am. I just told them where to fly." "Don't diminish what you did, Captain. I watched the entire operation. I know what that level of coordination requires." Martha paused, choosing her words carefully. "I also know why you transferred to intelligence 3 years ago. I approve that transfer. You came to me and said you couldn't carry that weight anymore, that every mission took pieces of you that you couldn't get back. I respected that. Still do." "But ma'am," Iris said quietly, "tonight you ordered Colonel Brennan to let me operate. You knew what that meant. You knew it would expose my identity." "I did, because 7 men were going to die without intervention, and you were the only person in theater capable of saving them." Martha's voice carried the burden of command decisions that never got easier. "I'm sorry for putting you in that position, but I'm not sorry for the outcome." The screen went dark again, leaving Iris standing in the operations center with 42 pairs of eyes watching her, studying her, seeing her differently than they had 30 minutes ago. Brennan cleared his throat. "Captain Lockwood, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you acknowledgement that my judgment was compromised by assumptions I had no right to make. You presented a tactically sound plan, and I dismissed it because—" He trailed off, the words dying in his throat. "Because I'm small and quiet and don't look like your image of a combat operator," Iris finished for him. "I understand, sir. That's why I chose this assignment. Nobody expects an intelligence officer to be anything other than a desk analyst. It's comfortable, safe, invisible. But you're not invisible anymore." Sabira's voice was small, ashamed. "Everyone here knows now. Everyone who is watching the tactical feeds. Everyone who has access to those classified files that Connor opened." Iris nodded slowly. "I know, which means I'll need to transfer again. Find another quiet corner of the military where people don't know the call sign, where I can go back to being nobody special." "Ma'am, you can't." Jasper stepped forward. "The military needs people like you, operators who can see what others can't, who can make impossible decisions and live with the consequences. You can't just hide that talent behind a desk." "I'm not hiding, Sergeant. I'm surviving." Iris's voice carried weight that made everyone in the room feel the truth of her words. "Every time I coordinate a fire mission, I see the people who didn't make it home, my team at Takur Gar, the soldiers I couldn't save no matter how perfect my calculations were, the pilots who trusted my judgment and paid for my mistakes. That weight doesn't go away. It accumulates, and eventually, it breaks you." She looked around the operations center, meeting eyes one by one. "Tonight, I had to be Phantom 7 again. Had to accept that responsibility. Had to risk carrying new faces that will haunt me when I close my eyes. But tomorrow, I go back to being Captain Lockwood, intelligence officer, someone who analyzes threats and writes reports, someone who doesn't hold lives in her hands." Bradley moved closer, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "Ma'am, when I said those things to you, when I questioned your competence and dismissed your plan, I was wrong. Not just tactically wrong, but morally wrong. I let prejudice cloud my judgment, and 7 men almost died because of it. But they didn't die, Major. That's what matters." "No, ma'am. What matters is that I learn from this, that I never again assume someone's capability based on their appearance or their current assignment. That I remember tonight, and the lesson you taught every person in this room." Connor pulled up another section of the classified file, his voice growing quieter as he read. "Ma'am, there's something else here. The reason you transferred out of operations. It wasn't just fatigue or stress. It was—" He stopped, his face going pale. "Read it, Lieutenant," Iris said tiredly. "Everyone will know eventually." Connor's voice shook as he continued. "Takur Gar, the 16 soldiers you saved. They weren't the only people on that mountain. Your team, Ghost Unit 7. They were overrun in the initial assault. You were the only survivor. You spent 11 hours calling in fire missions while surrounded by the bodies of your teammates. While knowing that if you made one mistake, 16 more people would die. You held that position alone for 11 hours. The operations center had gone deathly quiet. And when extraction finally came, Connor continued, you refused to leave until you'd verified the recovery of your team's remains. You stayed on that mountain for another 6 hours, coordinating body recovery under intermittent fire. The psychological evaluation report says you blamed yourself for their deaths, says you should have seen the attack coming, should have calculated better defensive positions, should have... That's enough, Lieutenant. Iris's voice cut through the recitation like a blade. Yes, I lost my team. Yes, I carry that weight. And yes, that's why I left operations. Because I couldn't trust myself anymore. Couldn't trust that my calculations wouldn't get more people killed. The only way I could live with what happened was to step back, to never put myself in position to make those decisions again. But you did make those decisions tonight, Dylan said softly. You put yourself in that position to save 7 strangers, knowing what it would cost you psychologically, knowing it would bring back all those memories. You did it anyway. Because the alternative was letting them die when I had the skill to save them. Iris looked at her hands, at fingers that had orchestrated death and salvation with equal precision. I couldn't live with that either, so I chose the weight I could carry, just barely. Advanced military leadership training programs now offer civilian certification courses in crisis management and tactical decision-making. These intensive programs, taught by retired special operations commanders, cover real-time coordination, high-pressure leadership, and strategic planning. Participants gain access to simulation-based learning, case study analysis of historic operations, and mentorship from decorated veterans. Courses range from weekend intensives to semester-long certifications. Many programs qualify for GI Bill benefits and professional development credits. Graduates report significant career advancement in emergency services, corporate security, and executive management roles. The radio crackled again, pulling everyone's attention back into the mission aftermath. Mason's voice came through, stronger and clearer now that the helicopters had reached safe airspace. Teok, Viper 6, I need to speak with Phantom 7. Direct communication. Brennan gestured to Iris, who picked up the handset with visible reluctance. This is Phantom 7. Go ahead, Viper 6. Ma'am, my team and I, we don't have words adequate for what you did tonight. We were writing our final messages home, making peace with not seeing our families again. Then the sky opened up and turned hell itself against our enemies. We watched precision fire that defied physics, watched coordination that shouldn't be possible, and now we're going home because someone we've never met cared enough to do the impossible. Mason's voice thickened with emotion. Ma'am, whoever you are, whatever your story is, please know that 7 families won't be getting those folded flags. 7 kids will have their dads at their graduations. 7 wives won't be widows. That's because of you, just you. And we won't forget it. Ever. Iris closed her eyes, her free hand gripping the edge of the console hard enough to make her knuckles white. You're welcome, Sergeant. Get your team home safe. Get them medical attention. Get them to their families. That's all the thanks I need. Yes, ma'am. Viper 6 out. She set the handset down with careful precision, then turned toward the exit. Colonel Brennan, I'm going to file my after-action report and return to my quarters, unless you need anything else from me. Ma'am, wait. Brennan's voice stopped her mid-step. You saved 7 lives tonight. You executed the most complex air operation I've witnessed in 30 years of service. You did it while being questioned, dismissed, and actively obstructed by your own command structure. And you think you can just file a report and go back to being invisible? That was the plan, sir. Well, it's not my plan. Brennan moved to stand in front of her, blocking her path to the exit. General Caldwell contacted me privately while you were coordinating the extraction. The Pentagon wants you to come back. Train the next generation of forward air controllers. Share your expertise. Build a program based on your techniques. I declined that offer 3 years ago, sir. My answer hasn't changed. They're prepared to make it a direct order, Captain. Iris's eyes hardened. Then I'll resign my commission. I've given enough to the military. I'm done making life and death decisions for people who trust me not to fail them. Even if those decisions save lives, even if your skills could prevent other teams from facing what Viper 6 faced tonight, especially then, sir, because every mission I teach, every technique I share, every operator I train, they'll carry pieces of my responsibility, my weight. And I can't ask anyone to carry that burden. Bradley spoke up, his voice careful and respectful now. Ma'am, what if it's not about burden? What if it's about capability? You have skills that can save lives. Refusing to use those skills is a choice, and that choice has consequences too. I'm aware of the consequences, Major. I live with them every day. The question is whether I can live with more, and the answer is no. I'm at my limit. Tonight pushed me past it. She looked at the torn sleeve, at the tattoo that had destroyed her anonymity. I did what needed to be done, but I can't do it again. Not without breaking completely. Jasper moved to stand beside Brennan, his expression showing the kind of determination that came from personal experience. Ma'am, at Sanguine, you told us stories while we waited for Cassavac. Kept us distracted from the pain and fear. One story was about a runner who wanted to quit during a marathon. Said her legs were done, her lungs were done, she was done. But her coach told her that finished was different than done, that she could be done feeling good, but still finish the race. You told us that story to keep us focused on surviving. Maybe you need to hear it yourself now. Iris stared at him for a long moment. I remember that night, Sergeant. I remember your name, Jake Hartley. Corporal at the time, shrapnel wound to your left leg. Kept joking about how it would make you faster once you healed. Kept everyone's spirits up even though you were in agony. Jasper blinked in surprise. You remember my name? That was 14 years ago? I remember all their names. Every person I've coordinated for, every face I've saved, every voice I've heard over the radio while bullets turned the air into geometry problems. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. And I remember all the names of the people I couldn't save, the ones where my calculations weren't good enough, where the margin of error was too slim, where perfect wasn't perfect enough. She looked around the operations center one more time. I'm done, gentlemen, not finished. Done. There's a difference, and I've learned to recognize it. But before she could move toward the exit, Connor's console lit up with another alert. His hands flew across the keyboard, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern to something approaching alarm. Sir, I'm receiving a priority communication. Origin, Washington, D.C. Classification, presidential oversight level. It's... He stopped, reading the message twice to confirm he wasn't misunderstanding. Sir, it's a direct communication for Captain Lockwood from the National Security Council. Every head in the operations center turned toward Connor's station. Presidential-level communications didn't happen by accident. They didn't happen for routine operations. They happened when someone very high up the chain of command had taken a personal interest. Brennan gestured toward Connor's station. Captain, I think you need to take this call. Iris moved to the console with visible reluctance, her body language showing exhaustion that went beyond physical fatigue. Connor pulled up the communication interface, inputting security codes that unlocked access to encrypted channels reserved for the highest levels of government. The screen flickered, then resolved into the face of a woman in her early 60s, wearing a suit that spoke of Washington power corridors rather than military service. But her bearing showed military training, and her eyes carried the weight of someone who'd made decisions that shaped nations. Captain Iris Lockwood, the woman said formally. My name is Director Patricia Morrison, National Security Advisor to the President. Thank you for taking this call. Ma'am, I'm not sure I had a choice. Iris kept her voice neutral, professional. You always have a choice, Captain. That's what makes tonight's operation so remarkable. You chose to act when you could have remained silent. Chose to risk your career, your anonymity, and your psychological well-being to save 7 lives. Morrison leaned forward slightly. The President has been briefed on tonight's events. He asked me to convey his personal gratitude for your exceptional service. That's appreciated, ma'am, but unnecessary. I was just doing my job. Your job is intelligence analysis, Captain. What you did tonight was far beyond your job description. It was an act of moral courage combined with tactical brilliance, the kind of act that defines what it means to serve. Morrison pulled up a document, consulting it briefly before continuing. The Pentagon has submitted a request to recall you to active operations, to build a training program based on your techniques, to share your knowledge with the next generation of forward air controllers. I understand you've declined that request. Yes, ma'am, multiple times. I'm here to ask you to reconsider. Iris's jaw tightened. With respect, ma'am, my answer remains no. I've given what I can give. I don't have anything left for operations. Captain, I've read your psychological evaluations. I know about Takur Gar. I know about the weight you carry. I know why you stepped back from operations. Morrison's voice softened fractionally. But I also know that tonight, When 7 men needed Phantom 7, you didn't hesitate. You didn't let fear stop you. You did what needed to be done despite the cost to yourself. That's not the action of someone who has nothing left to give. That's the action of someone who's afraid they have too much left to give. The words hit Iris like physical blows. Her hands gripped the edge of Connor's console, her breathing shifting to the controlled pattern she'd used during the fire mission. Around her, the operations center personnel watched in silence, witnessing a conversation that would determine more than just one officer's future. "Ma'am," Iris said carefully, "I appreciate the confidence, but you're asking me to relive trauma every single day, to teach techniques that kept me alive while my team died, to train people who might face the same situations that broke me. I can't do that without losing whatever stability I've managed to build." "What if you didn't have to do it alone?" Morrison pulled up another file. "The program wouldn't be just you teaching. It would be collaborative. Other experienced faculties contributing their expertise. Psychological support staff helping you process the trauma you've carried alone for years. A structure designed to share the burden rather than concentrating it on one person." "It's still my techniques, my responsibility, my weight." "No, Captain, it's collective responsibility. Shared weight. The way military operations are supposed to work." Morrison's expression shifted to something almost gentle. "You've been carrying Takur Gar alone for 14 years. Carrying guilt that doesn't belong to you. Carrying responsibility for decisions made by people who aren't here to share the burden. That's not strength, Captain. That's self-imposed isolation that's slowly destroying you." Iris closed her eyes. The operations center waited. 42 people holding their breath, watching someone fight a battle that had nothing to do with enemies or tactics or fire missions. A battle against memory and guilt and the weight of impossible choices. "Ma'am," she said finally, "what happened tonight can't happen again. I used access codes I shouldn't have. Violated protocols designed to prevent exactly what I did. Took control of assets without proper authorization. I committed court-martial offenses to save 7 lives. If I go back to operations, if I train others, I'll be teaching them to break the rules when the situation demands it. The military can't function that way." Morrison smiled faintly. "Captain, the codes you used tonight, they weren't unauthorized. They were dormant authorization protocols coded specifically for operators with your level of experience and judgment. Protocols that exist precisely for situations where standard chains of command become obstacles to mission success. You didn't break the rules. You invoked emergency provisions that most people don't even know exist." Iris's eyes snapped open. "That's not possible. Those codes were supposed to be deactivated when I transferred out of operations." "They were never deactivated, Captain. General Caldwell kept them active with my approval, because we knew that someday, somewhere, a situation would arise where Phantom 7's unique capabilities would be the difference between success and catastrophic failure. Tonight proved we were right to maintain that capability." The revelation settled over the operations center like a blanket. Iris hadn't violated protocols, hadn't committed court-martial offenses, hadn't broken faith with the military structure. She'd operated within parameters specifically designed for her skills and judgment, which meant her isolation had been self-imposed all along. "You set this up," Iris said slowly. "You and General Caldwell. You kept me mission-capable even while I was trying to hide. Why? Because talent like yours is too valuable to waste. Because experience like yours can't be replaced. And because deep down, we knew you weren't done serving. You were just hurt and hiding." Morrison's expression showed genuine empathy. "Tonight forced you out of hiding, forced you to remember what you're capable of when lives depend on your skills. Now the question is, what do you do with that knowledge?" Iris turned away from the screen, looking at the people around her. Brennan, who'd learned humility. Bradley, who'd learned respect. Sabira, who'd learned not to judge. Connor, who'd witnessed tactical mastery. Jasper, who'd watched a legend emerge from shadows. Dylan, who'd flown for her and lived to say thank you. 7 lives, she said quietly. That's what tonight cost me. 7 more faces to remember. 7 more voices in my head when I close my eyes. 7 more reasons to stay awake at night, checking calculations, second-guessing decisions, wondering if I did enough. And 7 families who still have someone to love, Dylan said softly. 7 kids who will grow up with their dad. 7 men who will see tomorrow because you were willing to carry that weight. Ma'am, that's not a cost. That's a gift, and you're the only one who doesn't see it that way. If this story gave you chills, wait until you see what happens next. There's another video on your screen right now about a female pilot who landed a damaged F-18 on a carrier in a storm. Click it, watch it, because these stories, they're all connected, and the next one will absolutely floor you. Morrison spoke again from the screen. Captain, I'm not ordering you to return to operations. I can't. Your service has earned you the right to choose your own path, but I'm asking you to consider the possibility that your path isn't hiding from your capabilities. It's learning to live with them, to use them without letting them destroy you, and to help others develop similar capabilities without paying the same psychological price you paid. Iris was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a different quality. Not acceptance exactly, but acknowledgement. Ma'am, if I were to consider this program, if I were to train other FACs, I'd have conditions. Name them. First, mandatory psychological support for every trainee, not optional, not something they can skip. Required participation in processing the emotional weight of this work. Agreed. Second, collaborative teaching structure. I don't work alone. Other experienced operators contribute their perspectives, their techniques, their mistakes. This isn't the Phantom 7 show, it's collective wisdom. Agreed. Third, I maintain veto power over my own participation. If I determine that continuing is causing psychological harm, I can step back without prejudice or consequence. No pressure to push past my limits. Morrison consulted someone off-screen, then nodded. Agreed, with the caveat that you work with mental health professionals to make that determination, not isolation masquerading as self-care. Fair enough. Iris took a slow breath. And fourth, I want the Ghost Unit 7 Memorial at Takar Gar reopened. My team's names deserve to be public. Their families deserve recognition. They died doing the impossible so I could keep doing the impossible. If I'm going to teach their techniques, people should know where those techniques came from. Morrison's expression softened completely. Captain, that memorial has always been open. It was classified for operational security reasons for 5 years after the incident, but it was declassified 9 years ago. Your team has been honored publicly since then. You just never checked. The words hit Iris like a physical blow. She'd spent 9 years thinking her team was forgotten, hidden in classified files that nobody would read, honored only by people with security clearances who couldn't speak their names aloud. She'd carried guilt for their anonymity on top of guilt for their deaths, and she'd been wrong. I didn't know, she whispered. I stopped checking, stopped looking, thought it was easier not to know. That's trauma, Captain. That's what it does. It isolates us, makes us believe we're alone with our pain, makes us think nobody else understands or cares. Morrison leaned forward. But your team is remembered, honored. Their families know exactly how brave they were. And if you come back to operations, even in a training capacity, you'll be honoring them further, teaching their techniques, ensuring their sacrifice saves even more lives in the future. Iris turned back to the screen, and for the first time since her sleeve had torn, she looked directly at her tattoo, at the coordinates, at the date, at the symbol she'd carried for 14 years as both reminder and burden. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice so quiet that people had to strain to hear. Scared that I'll fail again, that I'll teach someone my techniques and they'll still die, that I'll carry more weight until it crushes what's left of me, that I'll become Phantom 7 again and lose Captain Lockwood completely. Then don't become Phantom 7, Morrison said gently. Be both. Let Captain Lockwood use Phantom 7's skills. Let the analyst inform the operator. Let the person who understands isolation help others avoid it. You don't have to choose between identities. You can integrate them, become whole instead of fractured. Brennan stepped forward. Ma'am, for what it's worth, this command would be honored to support your training program. We have facilities, resources, personnel who witnessed tonight's operation and understand exactly why this matters. And we have students, Dylan added. Young FACs who are good but could be exceptional with proper mentorship. People who need to learn not just the technical skills, but the psychological resilience to survive this work long term. Iris looked around the room one more time, at faces that had gone from dismissive to respectful, at people who'd witnessed her emerge from shadows and understood finally what those shadows had been hiding. Not weakness, not inadequacy, but strength that hurt to carry and skills that cost to use. If I do this, she said slowly, I want something else. I want every person in this operations center to understand something about tonight, about what they witnessed and what it means. She gestured at the tactical displays, now quiet but still showing the aftermath of her operation. Tonight looked perfect, looked easy, looked like someone flipping switches and getting ideal results. But it wasn't. It was years of experience compressed into minutes. It was 140 previous missions informing every decision. It was muscle memory, built from situations where hesitation meant death. It was calculations done in my head because I've done them so many times that they're instinctive. Her voice grew stronger. But it was also luck, perfect conditions, assets that were available and functional, enemy forces that reacted predictably, communication that stayed clear, a million variables that could have gone wrong and didn't. Tonight was exceptional, and you can't expect exceptional to be normal. You can't look at tonight and think this is standard, because it's not. It's the best-case scenario executed by someone with unique experience under ideal circumstances. She met Brennan's eyes. If you train other FACs, they need to understand that. They need to know that perfection is the goal, but not the expectation. That sometimes, despite perfect execution, people still die. That the weight comes not from failure, but from responsibility. And that carrying that weight requires support, resources, and the understanding that asking for help isn't weakness. It's survival. Brennan nodded slowly. I understand, ma'am, and I'll make sure everyone who works with your program understands it too. Morrison smiled from the screen. Captain Lockwood, do I take that as acceptance of the training program proposal? Iris was silent for 10 more seconds. Then, finally, she nodded. Conditional acceptance, ma'am. I'll try. I'll do my best. But I reserve the right to step back if it becomes unsustainable, and I expect that right to be honored without judgment. You have my word, Captain, and the President's gratitude. The screen went dark, leaving Iris standing in the operations center with a decision made and a future uncertain. The weight hadn't disappeared. The fear hadn't vanished. But something had shifted. Some small piece of isolation had cracked, letting in the possibility that she didn't have to carry everything alone. Mason's voice came through the radio one more time. TOC, Viper 6, we've landed at Bagram. All 7 walking off the bird under their own power. Medical says we're beat up but intact. Sir, permission to request one final communication with Phantom 7 before we debrief. Brennan handed the radio to Iris without a word. Viper 6, Phantom 7, go ahead. Ma'am, my team wanted me to relay something. We've been talking about tonight, about how close we came, about the miracle that saved us. And we realized something. We don't know your name, don't know your face, don't know anything about you except that call sign. Phantom 7, the ghost who saved our lives. Mason's voice grew thick with emotion again. Ma'am, we need you to know something. You're not a ghost. You're real. You're human. You have a name and a face and a life that matters beyond your tactical skills. And we hope you remember that. We hope you know that whoever you are when you're not being Phantom 7, that person matters too. Maybe even more. Iris's hand tightened on the radio, her eyes closed. Her breathing shifted to that controlled pattern that kept emotions in check. Thank you, Sergeant. I needed to hear that tonight. You're welcome, ma'am. Viper 6 out. She set the radio down carefully, then turned toward the exit once more. This time, nobody stopped her. They watched her walk toward the door, small and tired and carrying weight that showed in every step. But Dylan called out one more time. Ma'am, one question. Why Phantom 7? Why that call sign? Iris paused at the door, not turning back. 7 was my team's designation, Ghost Unit 7. When they died, I took the call sign to honor them, to keep them alive in some way. Phantom because... She stopped, searching for words. Because after they died, I felt like a ghost myself, going through motions. Present but not really alive, existing but not living. And now, Dylan asked quietly, now I'm trying to figure out how to be alive again while still honoring the dead. She looked back over her shoulder, meeting his eyes. I don't have the answer yet, but maybe that training program will help me find it. She left the operations center, the door closing behind her with quiet finality. The 42 people inside stood in silence for a long moment, processing what they'd witnessed and learned. Finally, Brennan spoke, his voice carrying the weight of command decisions that extended beyond tonight. Everything that happened here is classified. Not because we're hiding failure, but because we're protecting someone who's given more than any of us can imagine. Captain Lockwood's identity as Phantom 7 doesn't leave this room except on an absolute need-to-know basis. Is that understood? 41 voices responded in unison. Yes, sir. Good. Now document everything. I want complete after-action reports from everyone who witnessed tonight's operation. Technical analysis, tactical evaluation, lessons learned, because what we saw tonight is going to change how we train forward air controllers for decades to come. Connor pulled up the mission footage, starting to compile the comprehensive record that would be studied at military schools around the world. Jasper began writing his personal observations, trying to capture the moment when legend became flesh and proved itself even more remarkable than the stories suggested. Dylan contacted Apache Flight Operations, coordinating the integration of tonight's techniques into their training syllabus. And in her quarters, Iris Lockwood sat on the edge of her bunk, staring at the torn sleeve and the tattoo that had ended 3 years of hiding. She traced the coordinates again, thinking about Ghost Unit 7 and Takur Gar, and the moment everything changed. Her phone buzzed, and an encrypted message from a number she didn't recognize. Captain Lockwood, this is Staff Sergeant Mason Cross. They let us use secure communications to send personal messages. Ma'am, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you'll care. But my daughter is 8 years old. Her name is Emma. Because of you, I'll be at her 9th birthday party next month. I'll teach her to ride a bike. I'll walk her down the aisle someday. I'll be a grandfather if I'm lucky. All because you decided 7 strangers mattered enough to risk everything. Emma will never know your name, but I'll tell her the story of the angel who saved her daddy. Thank you doesn't cover it, but thank you anyway. Semper Fi, ma'am. Mason. Iris read the message 3 times. Then she saved it, filed it away in a folder she kept for moments when the weight felt too heavy and the isolation too complete. A folder full of thank yous and stories and reminders that the cost of carrying responsibility came with the gift of making a difference. She lay back on her bunk, exhausted beyond words. Tomorrow would bring decisions about the training program, about returning to operations in a limited capacity, about learning to be both Phantom 7 and Captain Lockwood without losing either identity. But tonight, she could rest. Tonight, 7 men were alive who would have been dead. Tonight, she'd proven to herself that Phantom 7 wasn't gone, just dormant, waiting for the moment when impossible situations demanded impossible solutions. Her eyes closed. For the first time in 3 years, the weight felt a little lighter, not gone, never gone, but shared somehow with 42 people who'd witnessed truth and chosen to honor it rather than exploit it. And in the darkness behind her eyelids, she saw coordinates. N34.5 dig E69.2 dig, Takur Gair, where Ghost Unit 7 had died so she could live, where she'd learned the cost of perfection and the weight of survival. But also where she'd learned that some weights were worth carrying, that some costs were worth paying, and that sometimes being perfect for 18 minutes meant 7 families stayed whole. Sleep came slowly, bringing dreams of mountains and fire missions and voices in the darkness, but also bringing something new, something that felt almost like hope. The possibility that Phantom 7 and Captain Lockwood could coexist, could integrate, could become whole instead of fractured. The possibility that someday, the weight might not feel quite so impossible to carry. And in operations centers across Afghanistan and beyond, word began to spread. Not officially, not through channels, but through the whispered conversations of people who'd witnessed something extraordinary and couldn't quite keep silent about it. Phantom 7 was back. The ghost had emerged from shadows. The legend had proven itself real, and somewhere in a forward operating base in Kandahar province, a small, quiet intelligence officer was learning to be alive again. One mission at a time, one life at a time, one decision at a time. 7 men went home tonight. 7 families stayed whole. 7 futures remained possible. And one woman learned that maybe, just maybe, she had more to give than she thought. Not because the weight was lighter, but because she'd finally realized she didn't have to carry it alone. The operations center lights dimmed as night shift took over. Screens showed quiet feeds. Radios carried routine traffic. The crisis had passed, leaving only aftermath and lessons, and the promise of changes to come. But in the corner where Iris Lockwood had stood for 40 minutes, orchestrating salvation with nothing but skills and determination and the refusal to accept acceptable losses, a legend had been born, or rather, reborn, transformed from whispered stories into witnessed truth. Phantom 7, the ghost who saves lives, the operator who makes impossible look routine, the person who carries weight so others don't have to. She was real, she was human, she was broken and strong and scared and capable all at once. And she was, finally, no longer alone. The mission was complete, the story was written, the legend would grow. But tonight, in this moment, what mattered most was simple and profound. 7 men were alive. And one woman had learned that being done wasn't the same as being finished, that she had more to give, more to teach, more to be than just the sum of her trauma and her skills. Tonight, Phantom 7 had returned. Tomorrow, Captain Iris Lockwood would learn to live with that truth. And someday, perhaps, they'd become one person instead of 2 identities at war, one mission at a time, one life at a time, one step toward being whole instead of fractured. It was enough. For now, it was enough.